Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Let's take a look at Imagism. You'll note here the first bullet point, it says Imagism was purposeful. What does that mean? It was not an accident. Some artistic movements, whether it's in writing or the visual arts or the music, they can kind of happen accidentally, and then other people will pick up on what was done before and continue to work with it. Perfect example would be rock and roll. That was kind of accidentally discovered. Musical artists separately were working with different types of music and combining and trying to do new things, and rock and roll was born. It was accidental. Imagism was purposeful. There was a group of poets that were unhappy with 19th century poetry, with what was going on with the different poetic conventions. What we mean by conventions would be like the rules of poetry. And by the way, 19th century, yeah, there were different kind of quote-unquote rules that poetry had to follow. So they were really unhappy. They were trying to break away. They were trying to do new things. And what they wanted was a new type of poetry. You'll see here on the third bullet point that was direct, clear, and concise. Right? So direct, clear, and concise. What was Imagism all about? Well, the guiding principles that they worked up together, right? So they sat down and they were like, what do we want this new poetry to do? What do we want it to look like? Direct treatment of the subject. They wanted the subject to be the focal point of the poem. They were strong advocates for using common language of everyday speech and to use free verse. What we mean by free verse is they didn't want their poetry to be bound by the rules regarding rhyme and meter, right? For example, in a sonnet, you have to have so many, you're following a rhyme scheme, for example. You have to have so many beats per line. They're like, oh no, we're not doing any of that. And then the third thing, the image itself, imagery had to be really, really precise. The next question we have to answer is who? Who are these imagists? T.E. Holm was one of the founders of Imagism, and he came up with this definition. So when they were sitting around talking about Imagism, this is what Holm defined it as. He defined the image as the instantaneous receipt of information through the senses before any of this information might be intellectualized by language and active consideration. So he said we need to record this as quick as we can, as it comes through the senses. We don't need to, think about, oh, what does it mean? What could it symbolize? What does it represent? No, he's like, let's just get it down, guys, as quick as we can and work with it. He said that the image was the untouched material of experience. And he rejected sentimentality in verse. And by sentimentality, that'd be feelings. And sadly, he was to die in the First World War. This is one of Holmes' Autumn. A touch of cold in the autumn night, I walked abroad and saw the ruddy moon lean over a hedge like a red-faced farmer. I did not stop to speak, but nodded, and round about were the wistful stars with white faces like town children. So you can see what the imagists are trying to do is they're trying to create images like we have here. Notice that this poem is concise. It's really pared down. We can see that there's metaphors being used. But notice how tight everything is. The author really doesn't insert himself into the poem to tell us anything, just painting a beautiful, quiet picture here. Another one is Ezra Pound. Ezra Pound, the work that Ezra Pound did in modernism is really hard to understate. He's one of the most influential as well as difficult modern poets, and with whom he's one of the founders of Imagism. He's credited with really helping to shape those principles we looked at on an earlier slide. He emphasized clarity and being very precise with language. Ezra Pound is significant not only for his work with Imagism and with the Imagists, but he worked with and supported, edited, critiqued the work of many other modern writers. T.S. Eliot, Robert Frost, William Carlos Williams, Ernest Hemingway. So Ezra Pound, people today really don't know how influential he was in modernism as a whole, not just in poetry, but also in fiction, giving feedback, critique, helping other writers, right, with their work. In a station of the metro, the apparition of these faces in the crowd, petals on a wet black bough. When students encounter this poem for the first time, they say, "Bro, this is a poem?" Yeah, this is a poem. This is some of the newness that we see in Imagism, the newness that we see in modernism. What Metro is, it's a train station, and metros are in Paris. So we're at a train station in Paris, and this poem initially started off as a 36-line poem, but Pound realized that it wasn't fitting into the principles of Imagism, so he cut it down by half, and then he said, "No, I'm still not being precise. I'm still not focusing on the image." And then he came up with this, just 2 lines. So it went from 36 lines down to 2. So this is the precision that the Imagists are working with. So that crowded train station became to Pound the apparition of these faces, like ghostly faces. He saw them just like flower petals that were stuck on a wet black tree branch. That's what it was to him. That's the picture that he got. That's the impression that it made. And a lot of people shake their heads. This poem is really, really important. It kind of awakened writers and readers to what a poem could be. Another Imagist is William Carlos Williams. He was supported and helped by Pound. His voice is very distinctive, and he's credited for being a really sharp poet for everyday life regarding image. The Red Wheelbarrow. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow, glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. Oh, look how abstract we've moved from that initial poem, Autumn, then Station of the Metro, and now the Red Wheelbarrow, right? No capital letters here, no punctuation, right? This isn't even an independent clause. This isn't even a sentence. So what is it? What is it? It's an image. Oh, and look how beautiful of a picture this is. So much depends. Why so much? Why would so much depend upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. If you'll remember from the period overview of modernism, we said that one of its hallmarks is that it's an interaction between the reader, the work, and the truth. And we start to really see this interchange come to play in the work of the Imagists. So the impact that we have with Imagism, it really influenced not only modern poetry, but also modern fiction. And it changed poetic sensibilities. What I mean by sensibilities is it really changed poetry, right? Punctuation marks, nah, we don't need them. Capital letters, don't need them. We don't have to write in complete sentences anymore. And allowed poets to explore new subject matter, and the image was to remain a key poetic element that's even true today, where we are in the 21st century. You know, when people say, well, what is a poem? And one of the chief things that people say is, well, what is the image that that poem has? So we get all of this from the Imagists. Until we get to be together again, be well, do good work, and keep in touch.